We have breaking news as the New York Rangers have done it again. They've fleeced yet another team, sending Reilly Smith to the Vegas Golden Knights in return for a very interesting player. We're going to break down that trade as well as what other moves the New York Rangers could be looking to make ahead of tomorrow's trade deadline. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 68% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the New York Rangers, from trade rumors to trade reports ahead of tomorrow's deadline, practice updates, game reactions, all that fun stuff, it's free. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. But of course, breaking news, Reilly Smith is once again a Vegas Golden Knight. Chris Drury and the New York Rangers sending him back to Vegas in a pretty interesting deal, in a deal that I think that the Rangers won. We knew that Reilly Smith was going to get traded. We knew that it had to come. He wasn't even practicing with the team the last couple of days, and we've been talking about it in the last couple of videos that he was going to get traded. It was a matter of time. We just didn't know where. We did know it was going to be an American-based team. He does have all the Canadian teams and Buffalo reportedly, or, just speculating at this point, I guess, from everything we've heard on his no trade list. So we knew it was going to be an American team, and he ends up back in Vegas. And this is the official trade. This is Reilly Smith with no retained salary, by the way, which is something I had been talking about, that the Rangers could retain salary if they wanted to get another sweetener. They don't do that. I still think it's a pretty sweet trade for the Rangers. We'll get into why. But Reilly Smith to the Vegas Golden Knights in return for Brandon Bisson, whose dad is actually Pat Bisson, who's an agent, a well-respected and known agent in the league, and a 2025 third-round pick, which belongs to San Jose, which is a pretty good third-round pick. I was actually thinking at first, when I first saw the trade, that it was just Vegas's third-round pick, which would be a very high draft pick, or a low draft pick, I guess, in that way. And it's actually San Jose, so it's looking like it will be a very high third-round pick. Now, who is Brandon Bisson? We'll get into this, and then we'll get into some Reilly Smith stuff in a bit. He's barely played in the NHL. He's played a total of 24 games in the NHL with the Vegas Golden Knights, and he spent most of his time in the AHL. But in 2022-2023, he scored 37 points in 58 games. So that's not bad at the AHL level. I think this guy is going to be a fringe NHL, AHL player. And, it's going to be interesting to see if he ever does get into the lineup. Probably not this year. He's probably going to go down to Hartford, but I wonder what he can end up developing into. He is already 23 years old, and he was a former first-round draft pick, 29th overall in 2020. He was a first-round draft pick. Hasn't really developed there. There is still some potential. That 2020 draft class, as we've seen, even with Lafreniere, weird draft class. So very, very interesting. The Vegas Golden Knights, he's only played 9 games so far this season with them. Zeros across the board except for his plus-minus, where he has a -3, so not great. But again, with the AHL squad, this year, 19 points in 45 games. So he's a bit of a project player, right? He's going to come in. They're going to try to see if they can work with him in Hartford. The Rangers don't have a great track record of that, but I think the centerpiece of this deal is the third-round pick. When you look at Brandon Brisson's contract, he's also an RFA at the end of this year, so team control. They can re-sign him if they want. They can move off the player if they want. Again, he's a former first-round pick, so I do wonder if there is still something there. He's already 23, though, so would be interesting to see. But again, lots of flexibility with this move in terms of this player, so I don't hate that. And I don't hate Chris Drury, acquiring this player in return. We knew Reilly Smith wasn't going to be, it wasn't going to work out, right? It was looking like when they first acquired him last offseason that it could work out. It certainly did not. They got him as an option for, the top 6 heading into another big playoff run this year. The season hasn't gone that way. So we knew that he was going to get traded. So this is a pretty decent return for me personally for this player. Now, obviously, Reilly Smith has some retained salary. Pittsburgh retained some salary. The New York Rangers, by all accounts, right now, obviously, I'm making this video as soon as the trade details were announced, are not retaining salary on Reilly Smith. So if that is the case, that is fine work from Chris Drury, getting that high third rounder. That's San Jose's. And obviously a player that we don't know exactly what he's going to be, but again, my projection would be a fringe NHL or AHL player. And when you look at the Rangers cap space right now, their current cap space is $14 million, upwards of $15 million of deadline cap space to use tomorrow. They can still go out and make a bunch of more moves if they want to. I don't know if that is exactly the move that they want to do, but if they wanted to add some players with some term, they can certainly do that tomorrow. Again, I don't think that's the case. I think they want to call up some kids from Hartford and kind of run with that and see what they have with those guys down in Hartford. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they have up their sleeve. And when you take a look at, we'll get into some of the Reilly Smith and the contract stuff in a second, but when you look at, the projected cap space moving forward for the New York Rangers, they have a projected cap space of almost $17 million next season. Yes, they have to sign Keandre Miller and a couple others, but that's a good place to be, especially with some of the high-end talent that you have locked up. And guys like Mika Zibanejad, we don't know what's going to happen with that. They could end up moving off of him. So very interesting moves here for the Rangers. I wonder if they make any more before tomorrow. I would imagine there's at least one more that's going to go down for Chris Drury to kind of, solidify this team heading into the playoffs for what it is. And Reilly Smith, acquired by the Vegas Golden Knights, is a middle six two-way winger who creates chances at a decent clip and kills penalties, finishing the opportunities he gets, but has been inconsistent. But he did score a cup-winning goal for the Knights 2 years ago, so he does return to the Vegas Golden Knights, and just didn't work out in New York because for whatever reason it just didn't work with the the way that this team is kind of built, and obviously everything that's happened so far this season. So wish him the best. Didn't work out. He had a decent season still in terms of point production, but this is not a player that you can move forward with. You weren't going to re-sign him. So to get a high third-round pick for him and Brandon Bisson, who could be a pretty good player, at least on your third, fourth line if need be, if there's injuries, and maybe see if he can develop a little bit more. I think that's some good work there. And from Frank Zaravalli, this is another interesting thing to keep in mind. Waivers today are about to happen right now as I'm making this video. It could be very interesting. Expect to see at least one team creating some roster cap flexibility ahead of what could be a larger move. So the Rangers could utilize this as well. It's going to be very interesting. And one last thing so keep an eye on that too. Keep an eye on waivers. Could have another video today. Things could get very interesting in that way. And the last thing I will mention, this is from Johnny Lazarus, and we're going to have the fallout from this trade as well, and what Brisson brings to the lineup, and if he's even going to be in the lineup, and the third round pick and all of that. We're going to have some fallout from the trade. I'm sure there's going to be another move that Chris Drury is going to make, but Brandon Brisson was a stud at the University of Michigan, the 29th overall pick in the 2020 draft. He is the son of Pat Brisson, like I mentioned, one of the biggest agents in all of hockey, with who represents guys like Sidney Crosby, Jack Eichel, the Hughes brothers, Nathan McKinnon, Dylan Larkin, just those names to name a few. So pretty interesting move there to bring in Brandon Brisson, former first round pick. It's going to be interesting to see if there's more moves coming for the New York Rangers and what Chris Drury has up his sleeve. But let me know what you think about this trade. I think it's good work for the New York Rangers and Chris Drury to get an asset, a high third round pick for a guy that wasn't going to re-sign here. He wouldn't make a difference in any type of playoff run. He hasn't even been playing the last couple of games. He hasn't even been practicing. So tidy work here, I think, for the Rangers to get a third round pick and, a kind of a mystery box with Brandon Brisson. But I want to hear what you have to say about the trade in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.